They thought I was just an old woman who needed to earn her keep. My daughter-in-law gave me the ultimatum herself. Clean the house or leave. They saw an obstacle. I saw an opportunity. They thought I was cornered. But by sunrise the next morning, I had already sold the one thing they wanted to control. My name is Eleanor Hartwell. I am 72 years old, and for the past 40 of those years, I have lived in this house in Maple Hollow. It is a quiet house, smelling faintly of old wood and the lemon wax I use on the banister. The afternoon sun cuts across the oriental rug in the hallway, illuminating dust motes that dance in the stillness. Every photograph on the mantel, my late husband, Arthur, holding a too small Ryan. My graduation from Northwind Mutual's training program is perfectly aligned. It is a house of order, my order. But lately, I have been made to feel that my order is no longer the standard. Ryan stopped by this morning. It was the perfunctory Tuesday visit, lasting no more than 15 minutes. He stood in the kitchen, his eyes darting toward the entryway, never fully committing to the space. "Just checking in, Mum," he said, already halfway out the door. He is a good boy, but he is a distracted man. The real pressure doesn't come from Ryan. It comes through him, via my daughter-in-law, Savannah. My phone, a device I tolerate rather than enjoy, had been buzzing incessantly on the counter, a chain of messages from her, just mapping out the optimization plan. Phase 1, decluttering the main living spaces. We need to maximize the flow. Flow is Savannah's word for erasing everything that came before her. During their last Sunday dinner here, a dinner I cooked, and they criticized too much sodium, Savannah warned she had broached the subject. She spoke of the current economic storm and the necessity of leveraging all available assets. My home, the place Arthur and I built from a blueprint, was now an asset. "We could help you manage it, Eleanor," she'd said, her voice bright and artificial. "A high-end, short-term rental. It would basically pay for itself, help the whole family stay afloat." My house would help their family stay afloat. The tension wasn't just in the air, it was becoming physical. I walked into my study, Arthur's old refuge, and found small, coloured, sticky tabs on the spines of his favourite history books. A bright orange one read, "Box for donation." I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. I moved to the closet, where I kept Arthur's service medals, his letters, and the dried rose from our 20th anniversary in a cedar box. The box was not there. I found it moved to the damp corner of the utility closet, shoved behind the mop bucket, as if it were trash waiting for collection day. They hadn't even bothered to tell me. I was still holding the displaced box when my phone vibrated again. It was the final message in Savannah's monologue. "Look, Eleanor, we are trying to help you. Ryan and I discussed it. We need the house ready for the optimization by this weekend. If you can't handle the upkeep, you can't be there. Clean the house or leave." The casual entitlement of it. The assumption that because they once paid a single property tax bill for me 5 years ago when I was recovering from pneumonia, they now held the deed. I did not text back. I placed Arthur's box carefully on the kitchen table. I went to the kettle, filled it, and measured out my loose-leaf Earl Grey. The ritual calmed me. While the water heated, I walked to the heavy filing cabinet in my study, the one part of the room they hadn't yet dared to tag. I retrieved the file marked Primary Residence. Inside, the deed to the property. 40 years old. Paid in full for the last 22. And one name listed under owner, Eleanor Hartwell. I took a small notepad from the drawer. I wrote, "No POA signed, no joint tenancy, no signatures given." My handwriting, honed by decades of managing records at Northwind Mutual, was perfectly steady. The whistle of the kettle was sharp. As I poured the water, I dialed my neighbour. "Margaret," I said. "It's Eleanor. A quick question for you. Did you happen to see anyone at my house yesterday? I was at my cardiology appointment until 3. Mrs. Daly, who misses nothing, did not disappoint." "I certainly did. Dear," she chirped, "your daughter-in-law, Savannah, was here. She had 2 men with her. They had measuring tapes. She called them the staging team. They were very interested in your attic. I must say, Eleanor, I thought it was odd. Them letting themselves in while you were out." The tea was hot, but the ice in my veins was colder. They hadn't just planned. They had acted. I finished my tea. I rinsed the cup. I went back to my study. From the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, I retrieved my old work ledger. It was bound in dark green leather, the pages filled with my precise cursive. For 30 years at Northwind Mutual, my job was not just to store information, but to verify it, cross-reference it, and ensure every claim was backed by infallible proof. I opened to a new page. I drew 3 neat columns. It was a habit from a lifetime of dealing with discrepancies. I was not just cleaning the house. I was preparing a counter-audit. They arrived at 7 o'clock, just as the twilight faded. Ryan used his key, sparing me the choice of letting them in. Savannah followed him into my kitchen, her heels clicking aggressively on the linoleum. She wasn't carrying a token of peace. She was carrying a clipboard, which she placed on my kitchen table with authority. The header was printed in a bold, sans serif font, Deep Clean and Declutter Initiative. "Eleanor, we've formalized the plan," Savannah announced, clicking a pen. Her voice was bright, a polished veneer over cold steel. "We're giving you a deadline. Everything needs to be sorted by Sunday evening." She began to pace, her eyes sweeping the room, not as a guest, but as an inspector. "This is about future-proofing the space for everyone's safety. These area rugs," she gestured toward the hall, "are significant trip hazards. We need to standardize the storage solutions." Her gaze lingered too long on the door to my study, then drifted toward the stairs to the attic, and finally toward the garage. She was not seeing my home. She was seeing square footage. She was assessing my life for liquidation. "We need to optimize," she continued. "In fact, Ryan and I have already had a preliminary conversation with a realtor." Ryan, who had been examining a loose thread on his cuff, looked up, startled. "Savannah," we said. "Trent Klein, of Klein and Ridge Realty," Savannah said, overriding him. "He's very bullish on the neighborhood. He believes that with a few key upgrades, we could leverage this asset significantly." Leverage. I kept my voice perfectly level. "What does that mean?" "It means a refinance, Mum," Ryan mumbled, finally joining the conversation. "Just to access some of the equity to help with the upgrades." "Trent is confident," Savannah added, "that we can pull a significant amount out. It's the smart move, given the economic climate." I stopped polishing the spoon in my hand. I placed it quietly on the dish towel. "A refinance? That is a fascinating idea." I turned to look directly at my daughter-in-law. "It does. However, Raise a simple procedural question. I let the silence stretch. Who, exactly, is the owner listed on the deed? The hum of the old refrigerator suddenly seemed deafening. Ryan stared at the floor. Savannah's bright, practiced smile faltered for exactly 2 seconds. Eleanor, this is not the time for sentimental legalities. She recovered, her tone sharpening. This is about the family's financial well-being. We're all facing new pressures: federal taxes, the cost of living, potential medical debts. These things can pile up on a person. She took a step closer. Her voice dropped into a mask of synthetic concern. We are worried about you. This is a very large house for one person. If you can't manage the upkeep, perhaps it's time to consider a smaller, more appropriate space. She paused, letting the threat land. Hearth and Harbour has a lovely assisted living wing, you know, much more manageable. Hearth and Harbour. The place people went when their families were done with them. The polite, beige waiting room before the end. I turned my gaze to my son. Ryan. He shifted, unable to meet my eyes. Mom, we just want you to be comfortable. You shouldn't have to worry about all this stuff. And comfortable means leaving my home. Savannah scoffed, abandoning all pretense of kindness. This is happening. Eleanor, we are moving forward. Trent is already lining up a list of clients for potential viewings. Viewings. The ice I'd felt earlier was now a solid mass in my chest. Yes. So here is the final timeline. She tapped the clipboard with a manicured nail. You have 48 hours. 48 hours to clear this house of your clutter. Or you leave. We need a firm timeline for the clients. The staging team is booked. The ultimatum: clean the house or leave. My house. They expected a fight. They expected tears or pleading or the helpless rage of the elderly. I gave them none of it. I looked at the clipboard, then at Savannah's impatient face, then at Ryan's profound weakness. All right, I said. The single word hung in the air, robbing them of their momentum. All right, Savannah repeated, suspicious. Yes, I understand. I walked past them to the kitchen's porch door. You've given me a clear deadline. Sunday. 48 hours. It's late. And you've made it clear I have a great deal of work to do. I opened the door. The cool night air rushed in. They stood, bewildered, their script interrupted. I had failed to play my part. Well, good, Ryan stammered, moving toward the exit. Savannah grabbed her clipboard, her jaw tight with unspoken frustration. I watched them walk down the stone path to their oversized SUV. I did not wave. I shut the door. I turned the deadbolt. The click of the lock was satisfyingly final. I walked back to my study. I did not look at the checklist they had left on my table. I opened my old green ledger from Northwind Mutual. I found the page I had started earlier. I retrieved my good pen and wrote 3 lines, clear and precise. 1. Who benefits Savannah and Ryan? The startup. 2. What legal loophole do they think I don't know? My age, my supposed incompetence. 3. I choose the timing. I slept for exactly 6 hours. The disciplined rest of a person who has run a records department for 30 years. I rose before dawn. The 48-hour clock Savannah had started was ticking, just not in the way she imagined. My first stop was the pile of mail I had left on the console table. I sifted through it methodically. Tax statements, utility bills, the usual circulars, and a thick handful of glossy real estate spam. They all promised to buy my house for cash, sight unseen. And there, mixed among them, was a high-quality cardstock business card, Klein and Ridge Realty, Trent Klein. It had been left wedged in my mail slot, not sent by the post. He had been here by 7:30. I was on the phone with Aurora Savings, my bank for 4 decades. "Good morning, this is Eleanor Hartwell," I said to the branch manager. "Mr. Davies? I am performing a personal audit of my accounts. I need you to confirm, please, that there are no co-signers on my primary checking or savings." "Of course, Mrs. Hartwell," he said, the sound of typing in the background. "No, ma'am, just you. And my mortgage paid in full, October 2003. That is correct. And finally, Mr. Davies, are there any pending powers of attorney, liens, or applications for a home equity loan against my name or this address?" "Hold one moment." A longer pause. "No, Mrs. Hartwell. The account is entirely clear. You are the sole and only authority." "Thank you, Mr. Davies. That is exactly what I needed to know." My next call was more delicate. I dialed the Brookridge County Clerk's office, but I asked for a specific extension, one I hadn't used in years. "Geospatial records. This is Arthur." "Arthur, goodness. I thought you'd be retired. It's Eleanor Hartwell, from Northwind." "Eleanor Well? I thought I was the last dinosaur." He chuckled. "What can I do for you?" "A professional verification, if you have a moment. I am looking at my property title, and I just want to ensure the county's digital file is pristine. No errors, no recent amendments. The address is 305 Maple Drive." He took a few minutes. "Well, Eleanor, it's as clean as a whistle, just like your files at Northwind always were. Sole owner, Eleanor Hartwell. No encumbrances filed. No pending actions. Why someone giving you trouble?" "Just ensuring my records are up to date. Arthur, you know me." "That I do. Take care of yourself. Eleanor?" The house was legally, financially, and unequivocally mine. The foundation was secure. Now, for the termites. I was watering my front door petunias when Mrs. Daly walked her dog past. She slowed, as I knew she would. "Eleanor, dear," she said, leaning over the fence. "I didn't want to bother you yesterday, but I must tell you. That staging team Savannah brought. One of them called herself an organization specialist. I saw her through your window. She was taking photographs of your bedroom," Savannah told her, and I heard this clear as day. "We need the listing to look brighter, so we'll have to get all this dark furniture out." "Thank you, Margaret," I said, my grip tightening on the watering can. "That is very helpful information." Back inside, I sat at my desk. I opened my phone and found the text message from Savannah. "Clean the house or leave." I took a clear screenshot. I opened my email, attached the image, and sent it to my own address, with a blind carbon copy to a secondary account I maintained for digital receipts. I titled the subject line, "Timeline Verification." November 6th. A paper trail. It was the first rule of records management. My final call was to Hannah Price. She runs Price and Alder Community Legal and helped me draft my will after Arthur passed. She is young, sharp, and has no patience for elder abuse. Her assistant answered. "Hannah Price's office." "Good morning. This is Eleanor Hartwell. I need to speak with Ms. Price. It is an urgent matter regarding a property transaction." I was put on hold for less than 30 seconds. Eleanor, what's wrong? Hannah, I have been given a 48-hour deadline to vacate my home by my daughter-in-law. The silence on the other end was absolute. Eleanor, are you safe? Physically, yes. Legally? That's why I'm calling you. I need an appointment, as soon as possible. I'm in court all morning. Can you be here at 8 o'clock tomorrow? I will be there at 7:50. Good. Bring your deed, your tax bills, and any communication you've had. I already have the file, I said. I hung up. As I did, my laptop, connected to the house Wi-Fi, chimed with an email notification. I did not recognize the sender Apex Staging and Logistics. I opened it. Dear Mrs. Hartwell, this email confirms your booking for Saturday, November 8th. Our truck 20 foot, will arrive at 9:30 a.m. for the full house declutter and staging removal. Please ensure all personal items designated save are clearly marked. Invoice payable by Savannah Hartwell. Thank you for using Apex. They had used my Wi-Fi when they were in my home, and the staging company's automated system, mistaking the network owner for the client, had sent the confirmation to me. I looked at the email. They hadn't just planned to list the house. They had planned to empty it. On Saturday, I pulled out my green ledger. I found Trent Klein's business card. A quick search of the county listings database, a public resource I knew how to navigate, gave me the second, and more crucial, piece of the puzzle. There it was. A pocket listing, not yet on the public market, for 305 Maple Drive, status awaiting seller signature. They weren't just planning to refinance. They were trying to sell it out from under me. They had a stager, a truck, and a buyer lined up. All they needed was my signature, which they clearly intended to get through force, or my eviction. I picked up my pen and wrote a final note on my ledger page. If they want this house clean, I wrote, my cursive sharp and steady, I will clean it my way. I was at the offices of Price and Alder Community Legal at 7:50, just as promised. Hannah Price, already holding a coffee, ushered me into a conference room, the file from my study, containing the deed, the bank verifications, and the printouts of the texts and emails, sat between us on the polished table. She read through them with a practiced speed, her expression hardening. She looked up after 10 minutes, her eyes sharp. Eleanor, she said, her voice crisp. Let's be perfectly clear. Your title is immaculate. Your financials are secure. They have no legal leg to stand on. They cannot force you out. They cannot refinance a property you own. They cannot sell it without your signature. What they are doing is not just unethical. It's a blatant, textbook case of attempted financial coercion against an elder. The validation was comforting, but I was not there for comfort. I was there for strategy. They have given me a 48-hour deadline. Hannah, they arrive on Saturday morning with a truck. Then we will file for a restraining order this morning, Hannah said, her hand already reaching for the phone. We can have them served by noon. They won't be able to come within 500 feet of you or the house. I held up a hand. No, that is what they expect. A fight, a messy, public, family drama. I would be hysterical, confused, combative. That is the narrative Savannah will paint, and Ryan will sadly agree. They will use it as proof that I am unwell. Hannah leaned back, recognizing the truth in my words. All right. Eleanor, if we don't fight over the asset, what's the alternative? You control the timing, I said, echoing a principle I knew well. My daughter-in-law gave me an ultimatum. Clean the house or leave. I intend to do exactly that. I want to sell. Hannah's eyebrows shot up. Eleanor, a house sale takes weeks, months, even staging, listings, open houses. You don't have that kind of time if they're arriving Saturday. I am not interested in a conventional sale, I said. And I am not interested in the highest bidder. I am interested in speed and certainty. What about the Maple Hollow Land Trust? The MHLT? You mentioned them during my will consultation. You said they had a fund for seniors. Hannah's sharp look turned into one of slow, dawning admiration. The Keys Back Home Fund, she said, her voice thoughtful. They use it to buy properties quickly, for cash, to keep them out of the hands of developers and convert them into long-term rentals for community members. Teachers, nurses, retirees. That sounds perfect, I said. Hannah didn't hesitate. She picked up her phone. Marisol Hannah Price. I have a situation and a potential solution. I am sitting here with the sole owner of 305 Maple Drive. The house is paid in full. Title is clean as a whistle. Yes, that house. She is motivated to sell immediately, as in today. Hannah listened, nodding. Understood. Yes, she's right here. She muted the phone. Marisol Vega, the director. She's interested. Their fund is solvent. They can authorize a cash purchase and close in 24 to 48 hours, pending a structural walkthrough. Ask her the conditions, I said. Hannah unmuted. Marisol. What are the terms? Understood. A fair market appraisal, which they will pay for. They also offer a standard 30-day rent back, a temporary stay for the seller to get their affairs in order. I smiled. A thin, tight smile that did not reach my eyes. Hannah, please tell Ms. Vega I will not require the 30-day stay. I want them to arrive at a house that is no longer mine. Hannah relayed the message. A pause. And then Hannah laughed. Marisol says she understands perfectly. She can have her appraiser at your house by 2 p.m. today. If he signs off, we can sign the purchase agreement by 5. That is acceptable, I said. One more thing. Eleanor, Hannah said, her legal mind working. Given the circumstances, I'm adding a specific clause to the sale contract. No access to relatives. It stipulates that the previous owner's family has no right of entry, no claim, and all inquiries must be directed to my office. It's an iron wall. Perfect. I left Hannah's office at 9:15. My 48-hour clock was now a 36-hour clock. My first stop was Mrs. Daly's. Margaret, I said, handing her the small cedar box of Arthur's medals and letters. Can you hold this for me? And this box of photographs? And my mother's silver? Of course, dear, she said, her eyes worried. Is everything all right? Everything is being put in its proper order, I said. I spent the next 2 hours doing just that. I locked the attic. I locked the garage. I packed one suitcase with my necessities and my file of important documents. The rest of it. It was just stuff. The things that mattered were safe with Mrs. Daly. The appraiser arrived at 2 o'clock sharp. He was a quiet man who checked the foundation, the roof, and the boiler. It's an old house, ma'am, he said. But you've kept it beautifully. The bones are solid. He made his call to Marisol. At 4:30, I received the draft of the purchase agreement via email. At 5, my phone rang. It was Savannah? I'm just calling to remind you. Eleanor, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. The truck is coming Saturday. Are you making progress? Or do we need to bring boxes for you as well as the junk? Hello, Savannah? I said calmly. No need to worry. I am handling it. I took a breath. I will be cleaning tonight. You can rest assured. Good, she snapped. 48 hours. She hung up. I signed the purchase agreement electronically and emailed it back to Hannah. The cleaning had begun. That evening, I did exactly as Savannah demanded. I began to clean the house. I turned on every light, from the attic to the basement, until the house glowed on its quiet street. I went to the hall closet, but I didn't get a mop. I retrieved the large, heavy-duty plastic tarp Arthur used to use for painting. I spread it across the expanse of the dining room floor. It was a big clean, just as they wanted. But the only things I placed on that tarp were my files, my life's ledgers. I sorted them into 2 piles, keep and shred. There would be a third, unstated pile leave. This last pile would contain nothing of value, nothing that could be misinterpreted, nothing that could be used against me or twisted into a narrative of senile neglect. Just old utility bills, expired warranties, and manuals for appliances I no longer owned. I packed my personal files, the keep pile, into my sturdy records box, my pension information from Northwind Mutual, Arthur's military service records, my will, the original deed. These would leave with me. Everything else would be cleaned. At 7 p.m., a discreet, unmarked sedan pulled into my driveway, stopping short of the garage and using the back path as I'd requested. Marisol Vega was alone. She was a woman in her late 40s, all business, dressed in a practical blazer. She shook my hand firmly. Mrs. Hartwell, she said, her eyes already scanning. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. My appraiser's report was glowing, but I always do a final walkthrough myself before a keys back home acquisition. She was efficient. She didn't linger on my family photos. She checked the joints in the basement near the boiler. She eyed the wiring in the electrical box. She ran a hand along the support beams in the attic. She was not looking at potential or flow. She was looking at safety, stability, and longevity. He was right, she said, emerging from the basement. You've maintained this home impeccably. The bones are stronger than houses half its age. We sat at my kitchen table. The only document on its surface was Savannah's laminated deep clean and declutter checklist, still sitting where she'd left it. Marisol opened her briefcase. Mrs. Hartwell, the MHLT is prepared to make a formal offer. It is a fair market value, based on today's comps, minus the standard realtor commissions you would otherwise pay. It is not an investor lowball. We buy homes to keep them. She slid the offer sheet across the table. The price was fair. It was more than enough. But it was the clause on the second page that held my attention. As per your request, via Hannah Price, Marisol said, tapping the paragraph. We have included a permanent deed restriction. This property, 305 Maple Drive, may not be used, now or in perpetuity, for the purpose of short-term rental, vacation leasing, or any assignment thereof. She smiled, a small, professional acknowledgement of our shared understanding. This house will provide 2 affordable apartments for retired teachers or community nurses. It will be a home. Mrs. Hartwell, not an asset. That, I said, my voice steady, is precisely what I want. I picked up my teacup, still half full of Earl Grey, and set it directly on top of Savannah's checklist. The paper curled slightly from the heat. I took my good pen from the holder by the phone. I signed the preliminary sales contract on my kitchen table. "Excellent," Marisol said. She was already typing on her phone. "Hannah Price has the digital copy for her files. The earnest money deposit is being wired to your Aurora savings account. It should clear within the minute." My phone, sitting on the counter, gave a quiet ping. The transfer was complete. "Our closing is scheduled," Marisol continued, packing her briefcase. "7:30 a.m. tomorrow. Brookridge Title Company, on Elm Street. Is that time still acceptable?" "7:30 is perfect," I said. She stood, shaking my hand again. "Eleanor, you're doing a wonderful thing for this community. You're preserving a piece of Maple Hollow." "I'm just cleaning the house," I replied. After she left, I stood in the quiet, brightly lit home for a long time. I picked up my own phone and sent a single text message to Savannah. "The house will be truly clean by morning." I washed my teacup. I turned off the lights, room by room, until the house was dark. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, set my small travel alarm clock for 5:30 in the morning, and lay down. I felt a profound, archival calm. It was the same feeling I used to get the night before the end-of-year audit at Northwind. Everything in its proper place. Everything accounted for. The alarm went off at 5:30, but I was already awake. I dressed in my good tweed suit, the one I wore for audits and board meetings. At 6:45, seated at my kitchen table one last time, I opened my laptop. I drafted a new email. My fingers were steady on the keys. To Ryan Hartwell, Savannah Hartwell, Trent Klein, CC Hannah Price, Marisol Vega. Subject: notice of change in ownership, 305 Maple Drive. This email is to formally notify all parties that, as of 7:30 this morning, Friday, November 7th, I, Eleanor Hartwell, am no longer the legal owner of the property at 305 Maple Drive, Maple Hollow. The property has been sold to the Maple Hollow Land Trust MHLT. All future inquiries, correspondence, or attempted contacts regarding this property must be directed to my legal counsel, Hannah Price at Price & Alder. Any attempt to access the property will be considered trespassing and will be handled by the new owner's legal team. Thank you. I hit send. It was 6:47. By 7:30, I was at the Brookridge Title Company. The office was generic, smelling of warm toner and weak coffee. Hannah was there, as was Marisol Vega. We sat at a long, laminate table. A young notary public at the head of the table began the proceedings. "Good morning," she said, her voice official. "We are here to close the cash sale of 305 Maple Drive, Mrs. Hartwell. I will need your driver's license and a second form of identification. Please." I provided them. She scrutinized them with meticulous care. "Thank you." She began to read. She read every clause in a clear monotone, from the legal description of the property lines to the verification of the wire transfer. She paused at the addendum Hannah had written. "Addendum B non-interference." She read, "It is agreed by all parties that the seller, Eleanor Hartwell, is protected from any and all contact by her relatives, specifically Ryan Hartwell and Savannah Hartwell, regarding this transaction. All inquiries, disputes, or claims must be filed through the seller's legal counsel. Any unauthorized contact or attempt to contest the sale by non-deeded parties will be considered interference and subject to legal sanction." She looked at me. "Do you understand this clause?" Mrs. Hartwell. I do, I said. She turned the stack of papers toward me and handed me a blue pen. Please sign here, and initial on every page. My signature. Eleanor Hartwell was exactly as it had always been. Steady, legible, final. I pushed the papers back. The notary stamped them, her movements practiced and firm. Thud, thud, thud. Congratulations, Mrs. Hartwell, she said. At that exact moment, my phone, sitting face up on the table, lit up with a notification from Aurora Savings. The wire transfer from the title company's escrow account had arrived. The sale was complete. Marisol smiled and shook my hand. Thank you. Eleanor. We've already got a tenant in mind from our wait list. A retired nurse from Brookridge General who lost her apartment. She's been looking for a ground floor unit for 6 months. A nurse. I liked that. Marisol, I said, as I gathered my purse. I have one small request. I would be willing to pay for it. What is it? A small brass plaque, by the front walk, nothing large, just the Hartwell house, kept in trust for the community. Marisol's smile widened. I think the MHLT can cover that, Eleanor. I'll order it today. I was back in my car by 8:45. I drove home. My home. For the last time as its owner. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, my single suitcase in the passenger seat. I took a sheet of my good, heavy-weight paper from my file box. I placed it in an old, simple picture frame I had left by the door for this purpose. I walked up the path, past the petunias, and set the frame on the small table by the entry. The sign was visible through the glass storm door. Quan vung yen tin jang cho nguoi tue dai han mechelti. I went inside to wait. I did not have to wait long. At 9:15, exactly on schedule, a large white box truck rumbled down the street. It was emblazoned with the logo Apex Staging and Logistics. It hissed to a stop, blocking my driveway. The passenger door opened, and Savannah jumped out, clipboard in hand. She was wearing expensive athletic wear, ready for a day of directing. Ryan climbed slowly from the driver's side of their SUV, which had pulled up behind the truck. Savannah marched up my walkway, her eyes on her checklist. She didn't even look at the sign in the window. She saw me standing in the doorway, and her face lit up with a predatory triumph. Eleanor, she called out, already pointing. Good, you're up. Have the movers start in the garage. I want it emptied first. I opened the storm door. The morning air was cool. I held my hand up. Good morning? Savannah. Ryan. My voice was calm. My smile was thin, sharp as a paper cut. The movers will have to wait, but you are welcome to remain. On the porch. Savannah stopped 5 feet from me, her momentum broken by my stillness. The 2 movers behind her, holding a dolly, looked confused. Eleanor, what is this? Savannah snapped, rattling the clipboard. I don't have time for games, I said. Have the men start in the garage. This room. She jabbed a finger toward my living room window. Needs all the curtains down. We are painting it pure white, not the beige you like. The queen bed for the staging goes in the master. And this clutter. I don't think you will have to worry about the beige paint. Savannah, I said. I was holding a single, folded document from the closing. I stepped forward and held it out to her. This, however, does concern you. It's the final closing statement from the Brookridge Title Company, executed at 7:30 this morning. She snatched the paper, her eyes scanning it with predatory speed. I watched the comprehension dawn, not slowly, but like a switch being thrown. The high colour drained from her cheeks, then returned in a furious, mottled red. "What is this?" she hissed, the paper trembling. "Seller Eleanor Hartwell, buyer Maple Hollow Land Trust. What is this?" Ryan, who had been shuffling awkwardly by the truck, finally walked over. "Mom, what did you do? What kind of joke is this?" "I am not joking. Ryan," I said. "You can't." Savannah shrieked, finding her voice. It was a high, ugly sound. "We have viewings. Trent is bringing clients at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We have a timeline." "The house is clean, Savannah," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through her panic. "Just as you ordered. It is clean of your wish list. It is clean of your staging plans. It is clean of your name, your ambitions, and your timeline." You, she stammered, so enraged she could barely form words. "All the support we gave you, all the money we've spent. We paid that tax bill. You owe us. Support." I asked. I had anticipated this. From the file box by the door, I retrieved a second folder. I took the liberty of printing my bank statements and cancelled checks. Here is the receipt for every property tax payment for the last 10 years, paid by me. Here are the utility bills, paid by me. The support you are referring to was a single check you wrote 5 years ago during my pneumonia, which I reimbursed you for exactly 3 weeks later. I have the cancelled check for that, too. There is no debt. There is no support. There is only my house. As if summoned by the very mention of a deal, a sleek, dark sedan screeched to a halt at the curb. Trent Klein exploded from the driver's side, his phone pressed to his ear. He saw me and his face contorted. He had clearly just read my email. "Eleanor!" he shouted, storming up my walk. "What the hell is this email? You can't do this. I have a pocket listing. We had a deal pending. You are in breach." "Mr. Klein," I said, my voice carrying in the quiet morning air. "You had a hypothetical listing, awaiting a signature I never gave. As the sole, unencumbered owner of this property, I exercised my absolute right to sell, which I did. This morning, to a different party. You have no contract. You are now trespassing. Please leave this property." He stopped, his mouth opening and closing. The legal finality of it hit him. This was too much for Savannah. The veneer of her optimization language cracked, and the raw greed beneath was exposed. "You selfish old bitch," she screamed, and the entire neighborhood, now quiet, heard it. Mrs. Daly, who had been trimming her roses, froze. "You would rather destroy this family's asset than accept our help. This was for all of us. This was for Ryan." I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I simply stepped back into the doorway and retrieved the final document I had prepared. It was a single sheet of paper, a screenshot of her text message, which I had enlarged at the copy shop and printed on A4 paper. I held it up. The words were large enough for even the movers by the truck to read. "Clean the house or leave." Savannah stared at it, her own words, weaponized against her. The quiet was profound. I heard Mrs. Daly, across the street, murmur to her other neighbour, "Mr. Henderson." Well, she told her to clean the house. Looks to me like Eleanor cleaned it right down to the last word. Ryan, my son, looked at the sign. He looked at my face. He looked at his wife. He finally opened his mouth, and a pathetic, broken sound came out. "Mum, I'm sorry." "Don't you dare apologize to her." Savannah spat, grabbing his arm in a vice grip. Her face was a mask of cold fury. "This isn't over. We'll see you in court. You can't just give away our inheritance." She began to drag him back to their SUV, the staging truck forgotten. I stood in the doorway of my former home, the closing statement still clutched in her abandoned hand. "You won't see me in court, Savannah," I said, my voice calm and final, speaking to her retreating back. "You will see my lawyer." The explosion on the porch was only the main detonation. The shrapnel, I knew, would follow. I was waiting for it in the quiet solitude of Mrs. Daly's guest room, which she had insisted I take while I finalized my new arrangements. The noise, as I'd come to call it, found me mostly through my lawyer. Hannah Price, it turned out, was not a defensive player. "Good morning, Eleanor," she said over the phone that same afternoon. "Just an update for your file. I took the liberty of researching Mr. Trent Klein. It seems his pocket listing was not just presumptive, it was illegal. He listed it in the internal brokerage system without a signed agency agreement." "Does that surprise you?" I asked, looking out at Margaret's quiet street. "Not at all," Hannah said. "But it will surprise the Brookridge Association of Realtors. I've already filed a formal complaint. He's breached at least 3 sections of their code of ethics." The second wave came from Savannah. Having failed to intimidate me, she turned to slander. My cousin in Ohio forwarded me the email that had apparently been blasted to every distant relative. The subject line read, "Sad news about Aunt Eleanor." The body of the email was a masterpiece of manufactured victimhood. In a shocking and erratic move, Eleanor sold the Hartwell family home, for pennies on the dollar, to a government organization. We are all blindsided and deeply concerned for her. We fear she has been taken advantage of, destroying decades of family equity in a single, confused morning. Hannah did not appreciate the accusation that she had taken advantage of me. Her reply, which she sent to Reply All on the entire family chain, was surgical. Re the sale of 305 Maple Drive. As Ms. Hartwell's legal counsel, I am responding to clarify the gross inaccuracies in the previous email. Ms. Hartwell sold her home, which was hers alone, in a sound and lucrative cash transaction. She was not taken advantage of. She was, in fact, protecting herself from coercion. The final sale price, and here she listed the exact, very fair market number, has been securely wired to her private account. She then included a non-commentary, legally sanitized timeline 1. Monday. Client receives ultimatum, clean the house or leave. 2. Tuesday. Client is informed her home is being listed without her consent. 3. Friday. Client executes a legal, fast, and highly profitable sale to a trusted community trust. Any further accusations of erratic behavior or confusion will be treated as defamation. The email chain went silent, but the true reason for their desperation arrived in a separate, whimpering text message to my phone. It was from Ryan. "Mom, you don't understand. Branch and Bloom, Savannah's startup. It's not doing well. We needed the cash out refi. It was the only way to save the company." I stared at the message. Branch and Bloom, the pretentious lifestyle brand she'd started. They hadn't wanted to leverage my asset for my future medical bills. They wanted to liquidate my life to save their failing one. Hannah found the proof an hour later. "Eleanor," she said, her voice like ice, It's worse than we thought. They weren't just planning to ask you to refinance. I found the metadata in the file Trent Klein sent them. It was a completed mortgage application, in your name, for a $200,000 loan. All it was waiting for was a signature, one they presumably intended to acquire. They hadn't just been pushy, they had been preparing for forgery. While Savannah was attempting to paint me as a destroyer of family assets, the MHLT was painting a very different picture. They sent a press release to the Maple Hollow Gazette. Hartwell House donated to Community Trust. Will provide long-term housing for public servants. The community response was immediate. The online comments were a flood of support. What a wonderful legacy for the Hartwell family. Finally, a way to stop the Airbnb developers. Eleanor Hartwell is a pillar of this town. Savannah could not stand being the villain in her own story, so she changed the narrative. If I was not confused, then I must be incompetent. On Monday, Hannah received a notification. Savannah had filed for temporary emergency guardianship, citing my erratic behavior. Financial instability. The irony was breathtaking, and delusions that my family was trying to harm me. It's a spite filing, Eleanor, Hannah assured me. It's baseless, but we have to answer it. You don't, I said. I already did. 2 days ago. What? I had my annual physical with Dr. Belton on Thursday, the day before the sale. I asked him to run a full cognitive assessment and prepare a formal report on my mental capacity. I have it right here. It confirms I am, in his words, acutely sound and fully capable of managing my own legal, medical, and financial affairs. Please send a copy to the judge and to Savannah. The petition for guardianship was withdrawn by noon. The final piece of shrapnel was Trent Klein, still trying to get paid. He sent Hannah an invoice for consultation and opportunity fees, demanding 5% of the MFHLT sale price. Hannah's response was, I am told, just a link to the state statute regarding non-binding, unsigned listing agreements, with a polite note that his file was still open at the Realtors Association. We did not hear from Mr. Klein again. The noise was fading. I sat on Mrs. Daly's porch, drinking her iced tea. I was no longer in my yard, but I was tending my life. I was pruning the dead branches, the parasitic vines, cleaning the last of the noise, just as I had been told. Savannah, having failed in legal and financial channels, resorted to the one she had left, emotional manipulation. She called for a family meeting at her and Ryan's house. The summons came via a text to the extended family, positioning the meeting as a healing session to address the recent division. She intended to put me on trial. She had forgotten that I spent my entire career in charge of the archives. I never attended an audit without my documentation. I arrived at their sterile, grey-toned house. The air was thick with forced solemnity. My nephew, my cousins, they all looked at me with a practiced, sad concern, the one Savannah had fed them. I walked in, carrying a simple manila envelope. Eleanor? Savannah said, her voice dripping with the saccharine sorrow of a grieving host. Thank you for coming. We just want to understand. She launched into her speech. It was about family loyalty, about protecting assets for the future, about our deep concern for my isolation. I was, in her narrative, the one who had shattered the family's peace. I let her speak for 10 minutes. I let the narrative solidify in the air, just as she was winding up to her sympathetic conclusion. There was a knock on their front door. Ryan, startled, went to answer it. Standing on the porch was Marisol Vega from the MHLT. "Excuse me," Marisol said, her voice clear and professional. She wasn't looking at Ryan. She was looking at the assembled family. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Marisol Vega, director of the Land Trust. We just put our sign up at 305 Maple Drive, and several of the neighbors stopped by. We're circulating a welcome card for the new tenants. I was told several of the Hartwell relatives were here and might want to sign it to show community support." She held up a large, cheerful card. "It's to welcome our first two tenants. We're so thrilled. One is a retired nurse, and the other is Mr. Jasper Cole." A man I hadn't seen, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. He was older, with a kind face. "That's me," he said. Ryan's face went white. "Mr. Cole. My old English teacher." Mr. Cole looked at Ryan, his expression one of confusion, and then dawning recognition. Ryan Hartwell. "Goodness, I haven't seen you since you graduated. Yes, this wonderful trust is giving me a home. I'm finally moving out of my son's basement." He then looked at me, and his face broke into a warm smile. "And I get to be neighbors with Eleanor's legacy. It's only fitting." He turned to the room. "This young man, Ryan, he probably doesn't remember, but his mother," he nodded toward me, "Eleanor. She paid for his first 2 years of college textbooks. His father had just passed, and money was tight. She came to the school and arranged it quietly. She said, 'A mind like Ryan's shouldn't be held back by paper.' I never forgot that." The room was silent. The narrative of the selfish, divisive matriarch was suddenly choking on this new information. Savannah saw her control evaporating. "Mr. Cole, that's wonderful," she said, her voice strained. "But this is a private family matter. There has been a significant misunderstanding about the house. Eleanor, we were only trying to help." "A misunderstanding?" I finally spoke, my voice cutting through the silence. I stood up and opened my manila envelope. "I believe the terms were very clear," I said. I pulled out the first document. It was the screenshot of her text message. "Clean the house or leave. That seems very easy to understand." I pulled out the second. "This, too. The screenshots from your social media, Savannah, outlining your plans to turn my study into a boho chic Airbnb getaway. You posted it in a private group, forgetting my cousin was a member." I pulled out a third. "And the email you sent Trent Klein, discussing how to get control of the keys to expedite the process. These are not misunderstandings. These are plans." That's all out of context," Savannah protested, her voice rising. "We were worried you weren't coping." "Was I not coping when you came to my kitchen 2 nights ago?" I asked. "The night you delivered your 48-hour ultimatum." "I never," she said. "We would never. Ryan, tell them." Ryan just stared at his hands. "I see," I said. "Perhaps this will refresh your memory." I reached into my pocket, not for a piece of paper, but for my small digital audio recorder, the one I had turned on and placed on my kitchen counter after announcing, "For the sake of accuracy in this stressful conversation, I am recording this." I pressed play. The room filled with the sound of my kitchen, the hum of the old refrigerator, and Savannah's voice. 48 hours. 48 hours to clear this house of your clutter, or you leave. We need a firm timeline for the clients. The staging team is booked. Her voice was hard, cold, and utterly unmistakable. The click of me stopping the recording was the loudest sound in the room. Ryan Hartwell collapsed. He didn't faint. He simply folded in on himself, his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking in a silent, racking sob. The faces of my relatives had turned from pity for me to a cold, hard judgment. Their eyes were all on Savannah. The story she had built, the sacrifice for the family, had just been reduced to ash. Savannah looked around, her eyes wide, searching for an ally, for a single person in the room who was still on her side. She found no one. I placed the recorder back in my envelope. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I simply looked at her. My final audit complete. I did exactly what you demanded, Savannah, I said. Clean the house or leave. I chose to clean. I cleaned your greed out of my home. I cleaned your entitlement out of my life. And now, I am leaving. I turned and walked out the door, leaving them all behind in the wreckage of the truth. The following Monday was the official, physical handover. I had arranged to meet Marisol at the house at 9 in the morning. When I arrived, she was already there, standing on the walk. She wasn't holding a file. She was holding a small, gleaming brass plaque. She handed it to me. The engraving was simple and elegant. The Hartwell House. A home kept in trust. We had it rushed, she said, smiling. We thought it should be here when you handed over the keys. We stood on the top step, the two of us, when a familiar car pulled up to the curb. Not the SUV, Ryan's old sedan. He got out, alone. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes were red-rimmed, and he hadn't shaved. He walked slowly up the path, stopping at the bottom step, as if a line he could not cross. "Mom?" he whispered. His voice was raw. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't stop it. It was the confession of a weak man, not a changed one. It was an apology for himself, not for me. It did not touch me. Goodbye, Ryan, I said, my voice not unkind, but not forgiving. A moment later, the oversized SUV screamed around the corner, parking half on the curb. Savannah burst from the driver's side. "Eleanor, you can't. We can reverse this," the lawyer said. She tried to charge up the walkway, but a man I hadn't noticed, wearing a simple MHLT polo shirt, stepped politely in front of her. "Ma'am," he said, holding up a hand. "This is a private property transfer. I'm afraid you'll have to remain on the sidewalk." "I am her family," Savannah shrieked. "I'm sorry," the man said, unmoved. "As per the no relative interference clause of the sale, you are not permitted on the property during the handover." Savannah's face was a mask of disbelief, her authority utterly gone. I turned my back on her. I looked at Marisol, standing in the doorway of my old home. From my pocket, I took the original set of house keys, the heavy brass one for the front door, the small silver one for the back. They had been in my possession for 40 years. I held them out. Marisol placed her hand under mine, and I let them fall. The clink of the keys landing in her palm was small, dry, and absolutely final. It was the sound of a lock turning for the last time. Wait. Hannah Price had just arrived, walking briskly up the path. She smiled at me, then at Marisol, then addressed the small group on the lawn. Daly had come out, as had Mr. Henderson. I have one final announcement, Hannah said, her voice clear and bright. As her final act of ownership, Eleanor has directed me to donate a significant portion of the sales proceeds. We are officially announcing the Clean Start Fund, a new partnership with the MHLT to provide grants for emergency home repairs for other seniors in Maple Hollow. Savannah, watching from the curb, let out a sound of strangled laughter. You gave it away. You gave the money away. You sold cheap. You old fool. You sold everything cheap. I turned, and for the last time, I looked at my daughter-in-law. I was standing on the porch, and she was standing in the gutter. No, Savannah, I said, my voice quiet, carrying easily in the morning air. I sold the house at exactly the right price. And with it, I bought my freedom. Marisol gestured to the plaque. One last thing. Eleanor. She handed me a small engraver's pen. Your signature, to make the dedication official. And on the front porch, in front of my son, his wife, and my neighbours, I signed my name one last time. Eleanor Hartwell. There was no longer any question who was in charge of this house. Ryan turned, got into his car, and drove away. He didn't look at his wife. Savannah stood, frozen, as the MHLT representative took the small brass plaque and began to permanently affix it to the brick. A second man arrived and began installing a new, professionally printed sign on a stake in the lawn, directly in front of her. No short-term rental. This property is a permanent community trust. The sun was bright. It felt warm on my back. I picked up my single suitcase from the bottom step. I did not look at Savannah. I did not look at the house. I walked down the stone path, turned onto the sidewalk, and I did not look back. The house was finally, completely clean. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I'd love to know. Where are you tuning in from? Please let me know in the comments so we can all connect and share our thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.